Republican senators actually tried to intervene and stop the Friday night massacre in which the president fired witnesses who testified against him in the impeachment inquiry, clearly out of retribution for doing so and almost definitely in violation of the law. And then we found out the president's personal attorney has an entree into the Department of Justice. Senator Lindsey Graham told us so on live TV.
The department is receiving information coming out of the Ukraine from Rudy
already.
To see, he told me that they have created a process that Rudy could give information and they would see if it's verified.
Okay, that's weird. And then today, Attorney General Bill Barr confirmed that, yes, indeed, Rudy Giuliani, the man who is currently under investigation by the same DOJ and whose two associates attempted to get the whole Biden investigation started, are now facing prosecution. That Rudy Giuliani is funneling information directly to the Justice Department. Really looks like a quasi-authoritarian compromising of the prosecutorial authority of said government. Joining me now is a senator who has been very outspoken about the president's lawless move to consolidate power, Angus King, independent of Maine. So, Senator King, the most charitable interpretation of this set of facts is basically that no one takes Rudy seriously and everyone's trying to pawn him off on someone else and everyone's kind of yes-bossing Trump about this. But this really this is the president's personal attorney funneling the very dirt over which he was impeached over directly to the Department of Justice. Is that okay?
No, it's not okay. There's a whole structure. There's a State Department, there are ambassadors, there's a Department of Justice, and the idea that the personal attorney is doing this kind of work. I thought, frankly, one of the most damning pieces of the famous phone call, which wasn't perfect, was the mention of Rudy Giuliani. If it was all about corruption generally or about burden sharing or all the things the White House counsel talked about during the trial, why did the president say to the president of Ukraine, talk to Rudy Giuliani? He was a great mayor. He's on his own mission. It doesn't involve U.S. policy. It doesn't involve the national interest of the United States. It's a political errand, as somebody said. And the fact that he's now being sort of welcomed into the Justice Department is pretty disturbing.
You had warned about the sort of consequences of an acquittal vote against the president, particularly in terms of how he would take that signal and continue to abuse his authority. We've seen him now fire not just Alexander Vindman, who testified under subpoena, but also his brother. And there's been no cause given for why his brother was also marched out of the White House, as well as Gordon Sondland, who, of course, does serve at the pleasure of the president, but clearly it was retribution for his testimony. Now we're seeing Lindsey Graham talking about Giuliani being touched with Barr. What do you make of the first week and a half or so after that acquittal in terms of how it lines up with what your worries are or were about what signal the president would receive?
Well, I think one of the most worrisome things, and in the trial, the president's lawyers kept talking about the elections are the solution, let's wait for the elections. The problem is the offense that was at the heart of this was finagling the election, meddling in the election that's coming up. And what bothered me was that the president has expressed not a whiff of remorse, not any indication that he has any idea that he did anything wrong. And what that means is he's liable to keep doing it. I mean, there's a very little likelihood that he feels chastened or somehow, he'll change his conduct. And we're headed into an election, and he's already said he would welcome help from other countries. This is now. Chris, let me back up a step from this. The really worrisome thing about what happened last week is the long-term implications, because our country is based on the principle of divided power. That's what the Constitution is all about. It puts power all over the place, in the Congress, in the two houses, in the presidency, in the states. And the whole idea, the principle is a concentration of power in one set of hands is dangerous. And the Congress, in my view, has been committing kind of slow-motion suicide for the past 70 years. We've essentially given up the war power, expressly in the Constitution for the Congress. We've given up the trade power. The president now, imposes tariffs, on Canada, for Lord's sake, on our neighbors. on his own, unilaterally. Last year, we let him take money out of the appropriations bill that Congress had passed through the proper processes. He basically said, I don't like your priorities. I want to build my wall. I'm going to take $3.5 billion out of yours and put it toward the wall. And then last week, we basically said a president can stonewall Congress entirely in an impeachment proceeding, which essentially renders the impeachment clause a nullity. It just eviscerates it. And the implication is, what about ordinary oversight? The point I'm trying to make is that power is migrating from Congress to the president, and last week it didn't migrate, it leapt. And that's what's really, in the long term, concerning. Maybe President Trump won't abuse it. Certainly history doesn't reassure us on that front. But what about, I'm worried about 5, 10, 20 years from now. And, like I say, the framers set up this complicated structure on purpose. And by the way, presidents aren't grabbing the power. Congress is abdicating it. And this is what bothers me so much about what happened last week.
All right, Senator Angus King of the state of Maine, thank you so much, sir.